You want to know how I lost everything and then took it all back? It started with a calendar invite. Welcome to the board. That's all it said. No warmth, no congratulations, just a sterile meeting request that landed in my inbox like a slap wrapped in corporate courtesy. My name is Vivian, and 3 months ago I handed over my entire inheritance to save my husband's family business. $2.7 million. Every penny my grandmother left me, every dollar she scraped together working double shifts at the textile mill, gone in a single wire transfer. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment above my grandmother's bakery. The smell of rising dough was my alarm clock. The sound of her humming while she kneaded bread was my lullaby. She taught me that money wasn't everything, but respect was. Vivian, baby, she'd say, flour dusting her dark hands. You earn respect by being smart, not by being quiet. I wish I'd remembered that advice when I met Kirk. Kirk Stone swept into my life like a hurricane in a $1,000 suit. I was 28, working at a mid-tier law firm, living paycheck to paycheck despite my degree. He was old money, new charm, and everything I thought I wanted. You're different, he told me on our 3rd date, his hand covering mine across the white tablecloth. You're real. Real. God, how that word hooked me. We married 2 years later in a ceremony that cost more than my annual salary. His family smiled for the cameras, but I caught the whispers, the looks. I was the outsider, the girl who didn't belong in their world of country clubs and charity galas. Victor, Kirk's father, made it clear from day one. He'd shake my hand with the enthusiasm of someone touching a dead fish, his pale eyes scanning me like I was a balance sheet that didn't add up. Welcome to the family, he'd said at our wedding reception, his voice carrying all the warmth of a tax audit. For 4 years, I tried. I attended their dinner parties, laughed at Victor's outdated jokes, bit my tongue when they talked business around me like I was furniture. I thought if I just proved myself, if I just waited long enough, they'd see me as family. Then Stone Construction hit trouble. It's temporary, Kirk assured me, pacing our bedroom in his silk pyjamas. Dad's been through worse. The company's been around for 60 years. But the numbers didn't lie. I'd seen enough corporate restructuring to recognise a sinking ship. 3 major contracts had fallen through, 2 key investors had pulled out, and their biggest competitor was circling like vultures. That's when Victor called the family meeting. We need an angel investor, he announced, his weathered hands flat on the mahogany conference table, someone who believes in the Stone legacy. The room fell silent. Kirk shifted beside me, his jaw tight. How much? I asked. Victor's eyes snapped to mine, surprised I'd spoken. 2.5 million? Maybe 3. I felt Kirk's hand find mine under the table, squeezing gently. Viv, you don't have to. I want to help, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. My grandmother left me some money. If it can save the company, save your family's legacy. Victor leaned back in his chair, studying me with new interest. That's very generous, Vivian. Very family-minded. There would be conditions, I continued, my legal training kicking in. I'd want a seat on the board, a real voice in company decisions. Of course, Victor said smoothly. You'd be a full partner, an equal voice at the table. Kirk squeezed my hand again, his smile warm and grateful. Are you sure, sweetheart? It's a lot of money. I thought about my grandmother, about the respect she'd earned through decades of hard work, about finally belonging somewhere, finally being seen as more than just Kirk's wife. I'm sure. The paperwork took 3 weeks. My lawyer, Avery, insisted on reviewing every clause, every subsection. She was thorough to the point of paranoia, but I trusted her. There's something here I want to add, she said during our final meeting, sliding a single page across her desk. A protection clause. If they try to remove you from the board without cause, it triggers a penalty. What kind of penalty? Majority control transfers to you immediately. I laughed. That seems excessive. They're not going to kick me out. I'm family now. Avery's expression didn't change. Humour me. So I signed it. All of it. The investment agreement, the board appointment, the protection clause I was sure we'd never need. The money transferred on a Tuesday. By Friday, my phone buzzed with that calendar invite. Welcome to the board. I stared at the notification, something cold settling in my stomach. No call from Kirk. No celebration dinner. Just a sterile meeting request like I was any other investor. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. You earn respect by being smart, not by being quiet. I was about to learn just how smart I really was. The boardroom smelled like leather and old money. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing my best navy suit and the pearl necklace Kirk had given me for our anniversary. I wanted to look the part of a serious investor, a woman who belonged at this table. Victor was already there, shuffling through papers with Donovan, his right-hand man. They looked up when I entered, their conversation dying mid-sentence. Vivienne, Victor said, his smile tight. Right on time. Good morning, I replied, taking the seat Kirk had indicated in his text, third chair from the head of the table. Not at Victor's right hand, not even close to Kirk's usual spot, but at least I was here. The other board members filed in, 3 grey-haired men I'd met briefly at company events, Francesca the CFO, who always looked like she hadn't slept, and finally Kirk. My husband didn't meet my eyes as he sat down. That should have been my first real warning. Let's begin, Victor announced, rapping his knuckles on the table. First order of business, welcoming our newest board member and investor, Vivienne. Polite applause. A few nods. I smiled and raised my hand slightly in acknowledgement. Now, Victor continued, I know we're all grateful for Vivienne's generous contribution to the company. Her investment has given us the breathing room we needed to restructure and move forward. Absolutely, said Harold, one of the older board members. Very generous indeed. Something in his tone made my skin crawl, too sweet like artificial sugar. Which brings us to our next item, Victor said, glancing at a paper in front of him. Motion 2B regarding board composition and operational efficiency. Kirk cleared his throat. Dad, maybe we should. The motion is simple, Victor interrupted. Given the current market pressures and the need for streamlined decision-making, we propose that Vivienne step aside from her board position to allow for more experienced leadership during this critical period. The words hit me like ice water. Excuse me? It's nothing personal, Donovan jumped in, his voice oily with false sympathy. It's just that board experience takes time to develop, and with the company in such a delicate state. I invested nearly $3 million, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. The agreement clearly states. The agreement states you'd have a board seat, Victor cut me off. It doesn't specify the duration or circumstances. I looked at Kirk. My husband was staring at his hands, his jaw clenched. Kirk, I said. He finally looked up, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Cold calculation. It's probably for the best, Viv, he said quietly. Just temporarily, until things stabilise. All in favour, Victor called. 6 hands went up. Only Francesca abstained, her face carefully neutral. Motion carries, Victor announced. Vivienne, we appreciate your understanding in this matter. My understanding? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You're stealing my money and my seat, and you want my understanding? Nobody's stealing anything, Donovan said, his voice patronising. Your investment is secure. You'll receive quarterly reports. Get out, Victor said, his mask finally slipping. You're no longer a board member. This is a closed meeting. Kirk, I said, one last desperate attempt. Are you really going to let them do this? My husband looked at me for a long moment. Then he shrugged. Business is business, Vivienne. The security guard appeared so quickly, he must have been waiting outside. A young man in a cheap suit who looked embarrassed to be there. Ma'am, I need to escort you out, he said softly. I gathered what was left of my dignity and walked out with my head high. Behind me, I heard Victor's voice resume, already moving on to the next agenda item, like I'd never existed. The elevator ride down felt endless. The security guard kept apologising under his breath, but I barely heard him. My phone buzzed as we reached the lobby, Kirk's name on the screen. Hello? I answered. Viv, listen, I know you're upset. Upset? I laughed, and it sounded foreign to my own ears. I'm not upset, Kirk. I'm impressed. What? $3 million, 4 years of marriage, all for a 10-minute board meeting. That's efficient. It's not like that. This is temporary. Once the company stabilises, once you've squeezed every penny out of my inheritance, you mean. Vivienne, be reasonable. Business is a man's world, sweetheart. You knew that going in. There it was, the truth, finally naked and ugly between us. A man's world, I repeated. Look, why don't you go shopping or something? Buy yourself something nice. We'll talk tonight. The line went dead. I stood in the marble lobby of the building my money had helped save, surrounded by the portraits of stone men going back 3 generations. A man's world. We'd see about that. I drove straight to Avery's office. My hands were steady on the wheel, my breathing controlled. The rage had crystallized into something sharper, more useful. Avery's receptionist tried to tell me she was in a meeting, but I walked past her desk anyway. Vivian? Avery looked up from her computer, startled. What's wrong? They kicked me off the board, I said, closing her office door behind me. 10 minutes after the meeting started. Avery's expression shifted from surprise to something predatory. Tell me exactly what happened. I recounted the meeting word for word. Avery took notes, her pen scratching across legal pad with increasing speed. The bastards, she muttered when I finished. They planned this from the beginning. Can we fight it? Avery smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Vivian, do you remember that protection clause I insisted on? The one you thought was excessive? The majority control thing? But that was just triggered. Avery pulled out a thick folder. Section 12, subsection C. If you're removed from the board without cause within the first year of investment, controlling interest transfers to you immediately. I stared at her. What does that mean exactly? It means you now own 51% of Stone Construction. The words didn't compute at first. That's impossible. I only invested $3 million. Against a company valued at $5.8 million, Avery said, spreading documents across her desk. Your investment was substantial enough that the penalty clause gives you majority ownership. It's all here in black and white. I sank into the chair across from her desk. They don't know. They will soon enough. We need to file the paperwork immediately before they realise their mistake. Wait. I held up a hand. Before we do anything, I need copies of all company financial records, everything. Why? Because if they were desperate enough to steal from me, they might be desperate enough to steal from others. Avery nodded slowly. I can request full disclosure as part of the ownership transfer. It's standard procedure. Do it. 2 hours later, we had boxes of documents spread across Avery's conference room. Financial statements, contracts, expense reports, bank records. I'd done enough corporate law to know what to look for. Here, I said, pointing to a series of transactions from 6 months ago. These consulting fees to DW Enterprises, $50,000 a month. Avery looked over my shoulder. What's DW Enterprises? I flipped through more papers. Donovan Wells. It's his company. He's been billing Stone Construction for consulting while drawing a salary as an employee. Double dipping, Avery said. That's fraud. It gets better. I pulled out another set of documents. Look at these material costs. Victor's been inflating supplier invoices and pocketing the difference. Here, and here. Avery whistled low. How much are we talking about? I did quick math on my phone calculator. At least 400,000 over the past year, maybe more. No wonder they needed your money. They weren't just mismanaging the company, I said, the pieces falling into place. They were robbing it blind. My phone buzzed. A text from Kirk. Dinner at 7. We need to talk. I showed Avery the message. What are you going to tell him? She asked. Nothing. Not yet. Vivian, we should move fast on this. Once they realise what the clause means. They won't realise. Victor's too arrogant, and Kirk's too lazy to read the fine print. They think they've won. And Donovan? I thought about Victor's right-hand man, his oily smile and calculating eyes. Donovan's smart enough to be dangerous, but he's also smart enough to know which way the wind's blowing. Avery gathered the financial documents into neat piles. So what's the plan? File the ownership transfer paperwork tomorrow morning. Quietly. Then we wait. For what? For their next board meeting. I want to see their faces when I walk back into that room. As the majority owner, I confirmed. Avery grinned. This is going to be fun. Fun isn't the word I'd use. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. But it's going to be satisfying. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Kirk. Bring wine. The good stuff. I typed back. Of course. See you at 7. Avery raised an eyebrow. You're really going to have dinner with him? after what he did. I'm going to sit across from my husband and smile while he explains why stealing from me was for my own good, I said. And I'm going to nod and agree and let him think he's won. Why? I picked up my purse, checking that the copies of the financial documents were safely inside, because tomorrow morning I'm going to own his family's company, and I want him to remember this dinner as the last time he felt like he had power over me. The elevator doors closed behind me, and I caught my reflection in the polished steel. I looked calm, composed, professional. I looked like someone who belonged in a boardroom. Tomorrow I'd prove it. Kirk was already 3 drinks in when I got home. The expensive scotch, not his usual beer, Victory Scotch. There's my beautiful wife, he said, standing to kiss my cheek. The gesture felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced it in the mirror. I set the wine on the counter, a bottle that cost more than most people's grocery budget. How was the rest of your meeting? Productive, very productive. He poured himself another scotch. We made some tough decisions today, but they were necessary. I'm sure they were. He studied my face, probably looking for tears or anger. I gave him nothing. You're taking this well, he said carefully. What choice do I have? I opened the wine, letting it breathe. You made it clear where I stand. It's not personal, Viv. You have to understand that. I do understand. Business is a man's world, right? He had the grace to wince. I shouldn't have said that. But you meant it. Kirk sat down heavily at our kitchen island. Look, once things settle down, once we're profitable again, we can revisit your role in the company. My role? I poured 2 glasses of wine. What role would that be exactly? Maybe something in marketing or community outreach. You're good with people. I handed him his glass, our fingers brushing. That's very generous. We're a team, Vivian. We always have been. The doorbell rang before I could respond. Kirk frowned. Are we expecting someone? I'll get it. I walked to the front door, already knowing who it would be. Selina stood on our doorstep, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost more than my car payment. Selina, I said, genuinely surprised. What are you doing here? I heard about the board meeting. She glanced past me toward the kitchen. Is my brother home? Yes, but... Good. We need to talk. She pushed past me into the house. Kirk looked up as we entered the kitchen, his expression shifting from confusion to irritation. Selina, what do you want? I want to know what the hell you think you're doing, she said, grabbing the wine bottle and pouring herself a glass without asking. It's none of your business. Vivian invested $3 million to save our family company, and you kicked her out the same day. It's absolutely my business. Kirk's jaw tightened. The board made a decision. Dad made a decision. You just went along with it like you always do. That's enough, Kirk warned. Selina turned to me. You're being awfully quiet about this. I sipped my wine. What's done is done. That's it? That's your response? Selina's eyes flashed. They stole your money and your dignity, and you're just going to take it. What would you have me do? Fight back, sue them, burn the whole thing down. Kirk slammed his glass on the counter. Selina, stay out of this. Or what? You'll cut me off too? She laughed bitterly. Newsflash, big brother. I've been cut off since I was 18. I don't need Dad's approval to have opinions. Then maybe you should keep them to yourself. Maybe you should grow a spine. The siblings stared at each other across the kitchen, years of resentment crackling between them. I watched, fascinated despite myself. Why are you really here, Selina? I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. Because I've been where you are. On the outside, looking in. Watching them make decisions about your life without consulting you. It's not the same thing, Kirk said. Isn't it? Selina's voice was sharp. Remember when I wanted to study art? Dad said it wasn't practical. When I wanted to travel, he said it was irresponsible. When I wanted to work at the company, he said I wasn't ready. You weren't ready, Kirk muttered. I was 25 with an MBA from Wharton, but I wasn't ready because I wasn't you. The kitchen fell silent except for the soft tick of the wall clock. There's something else, Selina said, her voice dropping. Something you should know about Donovan. Kirk straightened. What about him? He's been skimming money from the company for months, maybe longer. That's impossible. Dad trusts him completely. Dad trusts him because Donovan makes sure Dad never sees the real numbers. Selina looked directly at me. You might want to take a closer look at the books, Vivian, before you write off your investment completely. Kirk's face went pale. Selina, if you're lying... I'm not lying. I've seen the invoices, the fake consulting fees, the inflated material costs. She finished her wine in one gulp. Your precious company isn't just failing, Kirk. It's being robbed from the inside. She set down her glass and headed for the door. Selina, wait, I called after her. She turned back, her expression softer now. I'm sorry this happened to you, Vivian. You deserved better. Why are you telling me this? Because someone should. She glanced at Kirk, who was staring into his scotch like it held answers. And because maybe it's time someone in this family fought back. The front door closed behind her with a soft click. Kirk and I sat in silence for several minutes. She's lying, he said finally. Is she? Donovan's been with the company for 15 years. He's like family. I nodded, swirling the wine in my glass. Family, right. Vivian. I'm tired, Kirk. I think I'll go to bed early. I left him sitting alone in the kitchen with his victory scotch and his doubts. Upstairs, I pulled out my phone and texted Avery. File the paperwork first thing tomorrow. It's time. The boardroom looked exactly the same as it had a week ago. Same leather chairs, same mahogany table, same portraits of dead stone men glaring down from the walls. But everything was different now. I sat in my car in the parking garage, watching through the glass walls as the board members filed in. Victor at the head of the table, Kirk to his right, Donovan shuffling papers with his usual self-importance. They were probably discussing quarterly projections or new contracts, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. My phone buzzed. Avery. Paperwork filed. You're officially majority owner as of 9 a.m. this morning. Ready? I typed back. Ready? At exactly 10:15, I walked into the building. The same security guard from last week was at the front desk. He looked up nervously as I approached. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you're not authorised. Check again, I said calmly. He frowned, typing something into his computer. His expression changed from confusion to shock. Yes, ma'am. Go right up. The elevator ride felt different this time, longer, more anticipatory. I could hear Victor's voice through the boardroom door as I approached. Third quarter projections look strong. The Vivian situation is behind us, and we can focus on... I opened the door and walked in. The room went dead silent. 6 faces turned toward me, expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. Gentlemen, I said, taking my seat at the table. The same seat they'd kicked me out of a week ago. Don't let me interrupt. Vivian, Victor's voice was ice cold. You're not supposed to be here. Actually, I am. I placed my purse on the table and folded my hands. Please, continue with your meeting. Kirk leaned forward. Viv, what are you doing? Attending a board meeting. Isn't that what board members do? You're not a board member anymore, Donovan said, his voice dripping with condescension. You voted to remove me without cause, I interrupted, which was a mistake. The door opened again, and Avery walked in carrying a leather briefcase. The room's tension ratcheted up another notch. Who the hell are you? Victor demanded. Avery Stewart, legal counsel for the majority shareholder of Stone Construction. She set her briefcase on the table with a satisfying thud. Majority shareholder? Harold, one of the older board members, looked confused. Victor! What is she talking about? Avery opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. As of this morning, my client owns 51% of this company. That's impossible, Victor sputtered. She invested $3 million in a company worth nearly $6 million. The math doesn't work. The math works perfectly when you factor in the penalty clause, Avery said, sliding copies of the documents across the table. Section 12, subsection C of the investment agreement. Removal from the board without cause triggers an immediate transfer of controlling interest. I watched the colour drain from Victor's face as he read the document. You can't be serious, Kirk whispered. Completely serious, I said. Congratulations, gentlemen. You just handed me your company. Donovan grabbed the papers, scanning them frantically. This is some kind of trick. A legal loophole. It's not a loophole, Avery said calmly. It's a contract. One that you all signed. I didn't sign anything. Donovan protested. No, but Victor did. As CEO, he had full authority to enter into investment agreements on behalf of the company. Victor's hands were shaking as he set down the document. This won't hold up in court. Actually, it will. Avery pulled out another folder. Especially when the court sees evidence of financial misconduct by current management. The room went dead silent again. What financial misconduct? Kirk asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Avery spread out copies of the documents I'd found. Bank statements, invoices, expense reports. Fraudulent consulting fees paid to DW Enterprises. Inflated material costs with kickbacks to management. Misappropriation of company funds totaling over $400,000. Donovan's face went white. You can't prove any of that. I can prove all of it, I said, speaking for the first time since Avery had arrived. Bank records don't lie, Donovan. Neither do invoices. Vivienne! Victor's voice was pleading now. Let's discuss this reasonably. We're family. Family? I laughed, and it echoed off the walls. You kicked me out of this room a week ago. You stole my money and told me business was a man's world. Now you want to talk about family? Francesca, who had been silent through the entire exchange, cleared her throat. If I may, she said quietly. The financial irregularities Ms. Stewart mentioned, I've been concerned about them for months. All eyes turned to the CFO. She looked tired, like she'd been carrying a heavy burden. I tried to bring them to Victor's attention several times, she continued, but I was told to mind my own business. Francesca, Victor warned. No. She straightened in her chair. I won't be silent anymore. The company's been hemorrhaging money, and it's not because of market conditions. It's because of theft. You're fired, Victor snarled. Actually, I said, you don't have the authority to fire anyone anymore. I do. The weight of those words settled over the room like a blanket. Victor's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This is insane, Kirk said. Vivienne, you can't just... I can do whatever I want, I interrupted. I own this company now, thanks to you. Avery closed her briefcase with a sharp click. Gentlemen, you have 24 hours to clean out your offices. Security will escort you out if necessary. Wait, Donovan said, panic creeping into his voice. We can work something out. I can explain the consulting fees. Save it for the FBI, I said, standing up. They'll be very interested in your explanations. I walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at the table. 6 men who had dismissed me, humiliated me, stolen from me. They looked small now, diminished. Oh, and gentlemen, I said, welcome to my world. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 7 a.m. The building felt different when you owned it. The marble lobby, the brass fixtures, the security desk, all mine now. I'd spent the night drafting termination letters. 3 of them, each one carefully worded to avoid any legal challenges. Avery had reviewed them twice. Francesca was already at her desk when I knocked on her door. Vivienne, she said, looking up from her computer. I wasn't sure you'd actually show up. Why wouldn't I? Because most people would run screaming from this mess. She gestured at the stacks of financial reports covering her desk. The company's in worse shape than I let on yesterday. I sat down across from her. How bad? Without your investment, we would have been bankrupt in 6 weeks. With it, we have maybe 6 months if we cut costs immediately. What kind of costs? Staff, overhead, executive salaries. She pulled out a spreadsheet. Victor's been paying himself $400,000 a year. Kirk gets $250. Donovan pulls in $180 plus his fake consulting fees. Not anymore. Francesca smiled for the first time since I'd known her. I was hoping you'd say that. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into Victor's office. He was packing a box with personal items, family photos, awards, a crystal paperweight shaped like a building. Vivienne, he said without looking up, come to gloat. Come to give you this. I placed the termination letter on his desk. He read it slowly, his face growing redder with each line. Effective immediately, no severance, no transition period. You stole from the company, Victor. You're lucky I'm not having you arrested. I built this company from nothing. My father started it with his bare hands, and I grew it into what it is today. What it is today is nearly bankrupt. He slammed the box down on his desk. You have no idea what you're doing. You'll run this place into the ground within a year. Maybe. But at least I won't be stealing from it while I do. This isn't over, Vivian. I have lawyers. I have connections. I'll fight this. Good luck with that. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Victor, security will escort you out in 10 minutes. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Kirk's office was next. He was sitting behind his desk, staring at his computer screen like it might offer him salvation. Your termination letter, I said, placing it in front of him. He didn't pick it up. Vivian, please, we can work this out. Can we? I'm your husband. Doesn't that count for something? I sat down in the chair across from his desk, the same chair where I'd sat countless times, listening to him complain about work, about his father, about everything except the fact that he'd never respected me. You called me sweetheart when you told me business was a man's world, I said. Do you remember that? I was upset. I didn't mean. You meant every word. I leaned forward. You meant it when you voted to kick me off the board. You meant it when you let your father humiliate me. You meant it when you told me to go shopping while you spent my money. I'm sorry, he said. And for the first time, he sounded like he meant it. I'm so sorry, Viv. I was weak. I let Dad push me around and I took it out on you. You're right. You were weak. I can change. We can start over. I'll prove to you that I respect you, that I value you. How? I'll work for you. I'll take a lower position, prove myself from the ground up. I'll do whatever it takes. I studied his face. The desperation there was real, but so was the calculation. He was bargaining, trying to find an angle that would save him. No, I said simply. No? No, Kirk. You can't work for me. You can't work here at all. I stood up. Clean out your desk. You have until noon. Vivian, please. This is business, Kirk. Nothing personal. I left him sitting there and walked down the hall to Donovan's office. The door was closed, but I could hear him on the phone. Doesn't matter what the paperwork says. We can challenge this. Undue influence. Fraud. Something. I knocked and walked in without waiting for permission. Donovan looked up, his face flushed. I'll call you back, he said into the phone. Your termination letter. I placed it on his desk next to his coffee mug. You're making a mistake, he said, not touching the document. I know where all the bodies are buried in this company. You need me. I need honest employees. You're not one of them. I can give you information about Victor, about Kirk, things you don't know. Like what? He leaned back in his chair, trying to look confident. Like the fact that Victor's been planning to sell the company for months. Your investment wasn't meant to save Stone Construction. It was meant to make it look profitable enough to attract buyers. Interesting. Anything else? Kirk knew about my consulting fees. He approved them. Also interesting. Donovan smiled, thinking he'd found his leverage. So we can make a deal? No deal. I picked up the termination letter and placed it directly in front of him. But thanks for the confession. I'll make sure the FBI gets a copy. His smile disappeared. You can't do this to me. I have a family, a mortgage. You should have thought about that before you started stealing. I'll fight this. I'll sue you for wrongful termination. With what money? Your assets are about to be frozen pending a federal investigation. The colour drained from his face. Federal investigation? Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. The FBI takes white-collar crime very seriously these days. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Donovan, don't bother cleaning out your desk. Security will pack it up for you. By noon, all three men were gone. The building felt lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from its foundation. I stood in the boardroom, looking out at the city skyline. My city now, my company, my rules. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You'll regret this. V. I deleted the message and smiled. Let him try. The first sign of Victor's retaliation came at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. My phone rang, jolting me awake. Vivian, it's Francesca. You need to get down here. Now. What's wrong? Someone tried to access our server remotely last night. They got into the client database before our IT guy caught them. I was dressed and out the door in 10 minutes. The office was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Our IT consultant, a nervous young man named Marcus, was hunched over a laptop surrounded by empty energy drink cans. How bad is it? I asked Francesca. They copied client contact information, project details, financial data, everything they'd need to poach our accounts. Marcus looked up from his screen. The access came from Victor's home IP address. He wasn't even trying to hide it. Can we prove it was him? His login credentials were used. Either he did it, or someone with his passwords did. I pulled out my phone and called Avery. Victor's trying to steal our clients, I said when she answered. We have digital evidence? I'll file for an emergency restraining order. Don't let anyone from the company contact clients until we get this sorted out. Too late. My phone was already ringing. The caller ID showed the name of our biggest client. Mrs. Patterson, I answered. How can I help you? Vivian, I just got the strangest call from Victor. He said there were some irregularities with Stone Construction's ownership, and that I should consider moving my project to another firm. My blood ran cold. What did you tell him? I told him I'd think about it, but honestly, this whole situation has me concerned. First you take over the company, now Victor's calling with warnings about financial instability. Mrs. Patterson, I understand your concern. Could we meet this afternoon? I'd like to explain the situation properly. I suppose that would be appropriate. 2:00. Perfect, thank you. I hung up and immediately called our other major clients. 3 had already heard from Victor. 2 were reconsidering their options. 1 had already decided to terminate their contract. He's trying to destroy us, Francesca said, watching me make call after call. He's trying to force me to sell back to him at a loss, I corrected. Classic hostile takeover tactics. My phone buzzed with a text from Kirk. Dad's lost his mind. He's calling everyone we know, spreading lies about you. I tried to stop him. I showed the message to Francesca. She snorted. Now he wants to help. Too little, too late. The rest of the morning was damage control. I met with 3 clients, reassuring them about the company's stability and my qualifications to run it. 2 seemed satisfied. 1 remained sceptical. At lunch, Avery called with an update. Good news and bad news, she said. The restraining order was approved. Victor can't contact Stone Construction clients or employees, but he's hired a team of lawyers to challenge your ownership. On what grounds? Fraud, coercion, breach of fiduciary duty, the usual kitchen sink approach. Can they win? Not with the evidence we have, but they can tie us up in court for months, maybe years. That afternoon, I was reviewing contracts when my assistant knocked on my door. There's a Donovan here to see you, she said. He says it's urgent. I found him pacing in the lobby, his usual confidence replaced by barely controlled panic. Vivian, thank God, we need to talk. We have nothing to discuss. Yes, we do. He lowered his voice. The FBI contacted me this morning. They want to interview me about the financial irregularities. Congratulations. You're about to become famous. I can help you, he said desperately. I can testify against Victor, tell them everything I know about his schemes. Why would you do that? Because I'm not going to prison for him. Donovan glanced around nervously. Victor's planning something big. He's not just trying to get the company back, he's trying to destroy you personally. What do you mean? He's been calling your old law firm, spreading rumours about your competence. He contacted the State Bar Association, claiming you committed fraud in the takeover. He's even hiring a private investigator to dig up dirt on your past. I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of dirt? Anything he can find. Financial problems, relationship issues, academic records. He wants to paint you as unstable, unfit to run a company. And you're telling me this because I want a deal. Immunity in exchange for cooperation. I studied his face. The desperation was real, but so was the calculation. Donovan was a survivor, always looking for the best angle. I'll talk to the FBI, I said finally, but I'm not making any promises. That's all I ask. He turned to leave, then stopped. Vivian, be careful. Victor's not just angry, he's desperate. And desperate men do stupid things. That evening I was working late when the building's fire alarm went off. Its piercing sound echoed through the empty corridors as I grabbed my purse and headed for the stairs. In the parking garage, I found Marcus and 2 security guards clustered around a fire truck. False alarm, one of the guards told me. Someone pulled the alarm on the 3rd floor. Any idea who? Security cameras caught someone in a hoodie, but we couldn't see their face. I looked up at the building, most of its windows dark except for the emergency lighting. Check my office, I told the guard. Make sure nothing's been disturbed. 20 minutes later, He returned with a grim expression. Your computer's been tampered with. Someone tried to access it, but the password protection held. I pulled out my phone and called Avery. Victor's escalating, I said, when she answered. He's not just trying to steal clients anymore. He's trying to steal information. We need to go to the police. We need to go to the press, I corrected. It's time to tell our side of the story. The next morning, the local business journal's headline read, Stone Construction Takeover Reveals Massive Fraud Scheme. The article detailed Victor's financial crimes, the FBI investigation, and his attempts to sabotage the company after losing control. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. and didn't stop. By noon, 3 major news outlets had picked up the story. By evening, it was trending on social media. Victor had wanted to destroy my reputation. Instead, he'd destroyed his own. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you've won, but this is just the beginning. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Avery, then blocked the number. Let him threaten. Let him scheme. Let him rage. I had the company, the evidence, and now the public narrative. Victor had taught me that business was a man's world. I was about to teach him that the world was changing. The FBI arrested Victor on a Thursday morning. I watched from my office window as they led him out of his house in handcuffs, the news vans already circling like vultures. My phone buzzed with notifications. The story was everywhere. Vivian? My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your mother's here. Mum walked into my office carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression she'd perfected during my teenage years, proud but worried. I saw the news, she said, setting a cup on my desk. How are you holding up? I'm fine. Are you? She sat down across from me. Because you look like you haven't slept in weeks. She wasn't wrong. The past month had been a blur of legal meetings, client calls, and media interviews. Stone Construction was stable now, profitable even, but the victory felt hollow somehow. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, I admitted, for Victor to find some new way to attack me. He can't hurt you anymore, sweetheart. He's going to prison. My phone rang, Kirk's name on the screen. Don't answer it, Mum said. I have to. He's called 12 times today. I picked up. What do you want, Kirk? Viv, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. Did you see the news about Dad? I saw it. This is insane. He's lost his mind completely. The things he's been saying about you to the press. What do you want, Kirk? I want to apologise. For everything. I know I screwed up, but I never wanted it to go this far. Your father's going to prison for fraud and conspiracy. Your family name is ruined. Was it worth it? Silence on the other end. I filed for divorce this morning, I continued, and the papers will be served tomorrow. Vivian, please, we can work this out. I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me, the compliant wife who doesn't ask questions. That's not true. Goodbye, Kirk. I hung up and turned off my phone. Mum reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. You did the right thing. Did I? Sometimes I wonder if I'm just as bad as they are. All this revenge, all this destruction. You exposed criminals, Vivian. You saved a company and protected its employees. That's not revenge. That's justice. A knock on my door interrupted us. Selina walked in, looking uncharacteristically nervous. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said. Not at all. Selina, this is my mother. Mum, this is Kirk's sister. The one who warned you about Donovan, Mum said, standing to shake her hand. Thank you. Selina smiled. I should be thanking Vivian. She freed me from that toxic family. How are you doing? I asked. With everything that's happened? Honestly, I feel lighter than I have in years. She sat down in the chair next to Mum. I wanted to tell you something. I'm starting my own design firm, residential architecture. That's wonderful. I was wondering, would Stone Construction be interested in partnering on some projects? I know we could create something beautiful together. I looked at her, really looked at her. The hope in her eyes, the excitement in her voice. She was offering me something I'd never had with her family, a genuine partnership. I'd like that, I said. Really? Really? Selina grinned. I have some ideas I'd love to show you when you're ready. I'm ready now. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through photos of her designs. Mum leaned in to look, asking questions about materials and layouts. For the first time in months, I felt something other than anger or exhaustion. I felt possibility. Vivian? Francesca appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. Says it's about Victor. A woman in her 50s stood in the lobby, clutching a manila envelope. She introduced herself as Patricia, Victor's former secretary. I worked for him for 20 years, she said. I kept quiet about a lot of things I shouldn't have. What kind of things? She handed me the envelope. Financial records he thought he'd destroyed. Evidence of bribes, kickbacks, tax evasion going back a decade. I opened the envelope and scanned the documents. Bank statements, receipts, handwritten notes in Victor's distinctive scrawl. Why are you giving me this? Because he ruined good people. Employees who questioned him, contractors who wouldn't play his games. He destroyed their reputations, their livelihoods. Her voice shook with anger. Someone needs to make sure he pays for all of it. The FBI will want to see these. I know. I'm meeting with them tomorrow. She paused at the door. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I was scared. You're speaking up now. That's what matters. She nodded and left. I looked down at the documents in my hands. More evidence, more crimes, more reasons to hate Victor. But I didn't feel hatred anymore. I felt tired. What are you thinking? Mom asked. I'm thinking I want to build something instead of tearing things down. Selina looked up from her phone. What do you want to build? I walked to the window and looked out at the city. My city now, in a way. My company, my responsibility, my chance to do things differently. A company that treats people with respect. Projects that make communities better. A legacy worth having. That sounds perfect, Selina said. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your victory. You've earned it. A friend. I showed it to Mum and Selina. We all stared at the message. Another mystery? Mum asked. Probably. I deleted the text and put my phone away. But I'm done chasing ghosts. I have work to do. I sat down at my desk and pulled out a legal pad. At the top of the page, I wrote, Stone construction, new vision. Below that, I started making a list. Fair wages for all employees, profit-sharing programs, community investment initiatives, partnerships with local businesses, a company built on respect instead of fear, a legacy worth having. The sun was setting outside my window, casting long shadows across the office. But for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of what tomorrow might bring. I was excited about it.